Welcome to Life Planning 101, brought to you by Kennedy Financial Services of Eastland. Tune in every Monday morning at 8:30 on KATX and again on Saturday morning at 9 a.m. on KATX and KWBY as Angela Robinson joins Stace Gaddy to share important financial information to help you live life on purpose, insurance, investments, estate and tax planning, and much more. All covered now on Life Planning 101.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the program. This is Life Planning 101. I'm Stace Gaddy, and our special guest and expert is here, as always, Angela Robinson from Kennedy Financial Services. Good morning, ma'am.
Good morning, Stace, and what a great morning it is. We've got a great show lined out, which I think I say that every week.
Well, they always are. They really are.
Well, I'm always excited to do it. I do have a passion, and I thank God every day for the passion that He's given me to do what I do. It is exciting, and I love being able to share, and I think I always pray that at least every show that I'm able to help someone with what we talk about on that show in some sort of fashion or another. And today's show, is really kind of one of those eye-opening things that, some of us often don't think about until it's too late. And I was reading this study, and this is what actually gave me the idea for the show. I was reading this study done by Transamerica. They're an insurance company. They do, of course, life insurance and annuities, and yeah. But they have a Center for Retirement Studies, and they've developed this area of their organization, which is good. It's smart to do in their industry, to go out and do their own research and figure out what's really going on with retirees. What are the desires? What are the fears? What's happening, right? And one of the studies they did, and I thought this was interesting, was talking about the enjoyment in retirement. And only 44% of retirees that they interviewed said that their enjoyment in life during retirement has actually increased.
Really?
Yeah. And I looked at that and I thought, that's kind of backwards because for most people, they are just so worn out from working or so stressed or at a point in life that they're ready for a change, or, retirement has been something that they've been looking for many years, or, they want to quit what they're doing but go back and be able to do it full of fervor because they're not at someone else's mercy. There's all kinds of reasons, but it's usually to have a better life. Is that right? Retirement?
Supposed to be.
Yeah. Yet only 44% say that that's actually happened in retirement. So, what is that really about? Why is that? And, we do what we call life planning. We don't consider ourselves financial planners. When I always hear, everybody asks me what I do. I don't know how to answer that question. I really don't. I could say I'm a financial advisor, and yes, that is true to an extent because we do offer a lot of financial advice and we do put together the financial plans for someone. However, what we do is not financial advice. What we do is life advice. We take someone's retirement goals, their life goals. What is their most meaningful life pursuits that they want to have happen? What are the values that they hold dear in their family and they want for themselves and their future generations? And we couple that with the money. We kind of do things backwards, I guess you could say. Because a lot of times we just say, oh, well, I have this goal to retire at 65. And, let's say I live to 95. How am I going to make sure that I don't run out of money? Well, by doing that, you kind of miss some components. Just a few components. An example was I actually had a lady in the office yesterday, and we were visiting, and I asked her, I said, are you excited? Because she's about to retire. And I said, are you excited? And she kind of looks at me and she goes, well, it's bittersweet. She says, I almost don't know what I'm going to do. And I said, well, we need to make sure you got something to be able to retire to. In other words, what is your next journey in life going to be about? And that can affect your financial plan if it changes, because sometimes we're just so burnt out with where we're at that we forget to look forward and forget to look at what's really important to us. We had another lady come in our office, and I love her to death. She's about the best grandmother. In fact, I wish she was my grandmother. She's the best grandmother there ever was, those grandkids. She spoils them rotten. And she said, I really want to set up for my youngest grandchild. I want to set up her college planning, and she's 11 right now, and want to get pretty hot and heavy on doing that. And so we started going through what we kind of call like these life goal questions about that particular instance, and got to the bottom of it. And really her desire was not to help her pay for college. What her desire was to help her get a desire to learn, to continue to learn, to have that lifelong learning. She wanted her to be well educated, but she wanted her to be in a position where she was 50 years old, she was still out there and had a love for learning. And so we did some brainstorming and got around some things. And what we decided to do was, rather than do all of that money in a college fund, was to divert some of those funds to summer camp for her 11-year-old granddaughter in a computer design course, because that's what kind of fascinated her at this point in time. And we decided we were going to do that every year, that whatever her fascination was, feed that fascination, so that, when she gets older, she has that desire to learn. She has the desire to, I want to go take that course, or, I want to pick up that book and learn about that, because, we played off of that dreams, those little small dreams that 11-year-old had. And of course, when you think about the grandmother's position, that just was enthralling to her, because it really accomplished what her life goals were, not just her financial goals. When we come back, we're going to talk a little bit more about this. We're also going to be talking about the best state to retire in. I've got some information you don't want to miss.
More Life Planning 101 right after these messages. And we are back right here on Life Planning 101. I'm Stace Gaddy. Angela Robinson, of course, in studio, our guest and expert from Kennedy Financial Services. We're talking about retirement plans, and are they a financial plan or a life plan? That's a big difference, Angela Robinson.
It is a big difference, and it's not one that most people know about. And that's just going with those statistics that we were reading off earlier, that, only 44% of people that retire are actually happier in retirement than they were while they were working. And, why is that? What is causing that? And it's, leaving out the life goals. It's leaving out the focus on living life on purpose, as we call it, rather than just the money. Because, and I'm not discrediting the money. Please don't get me wrong. It is a big tool that you need to make sure you have everything in a row in retirement, no doubt. And because I think that's most people's fears. In fact, one of those statistics in there I was seeing inside of that Transamerica Center for Retirement Studies was why people choose to live where they're going to live during retirement. And 56% of people choose where to live because it's an affordable cost of living area. That's more people choose where to live based on that than choosing where to live because that's where their friends and family are.
I can see a problem with that.
Yes, it's backwards. Again, it's backwards, isn't it? And so, and I always think about, if you're sitting here at the end of life and you're looking back on your retirement, what do you not want to regret? Would it be not spending enough time with your grandkids, living too far away from them? I would think that'd probably be one of them. And so aren't we doing this all backwards? We're doing it all based on a financial need rather than a life need. What fulfills you? What enthralls you? What keeps you going? I'm real big on what we call quality of life. I preach this to our clients about quality of life, because during retirement it becomes more important than ever to focus on you. I love Dr. Cooper. He's a doctor out of the Cooper Clinic there in Dallas, and he's in his 90s. He's still practicing medicine. But, he talks about having a quality of life towards the end of life. And, of course, they've got a great little study on how to do that physically. But another way is mentally, focusing on your mental aspect. If you kind of go in a hole and you become in depression, well, yeah, you're going to have other health problems happen, and it's going to happen sooner. So, taking care of yourself in a sense of taking care of your well-being is so important. And we forget to do that. We forget to incorporate that into our plan. We make it just all about the money, right? And wrong. It's
right
very,
and wrong.
right, and it's very wrong, right?
Well, if you could afford a place and you base it all on that, but there's nothing to do there and there's nothing that excites you, That seems like a no-brainer.
Yes, it does. In fact, I thought this was interesting, so I kind of printed this off because I thought this was really good. There was an article that came out in one of my financial advisor magazines, and it was the 10 best states for retiring in 2016.
Okay.
Right? And I want to read you this little excerpt out of this because this is funny. It says, the Sun Belt is no longer the best place for retirees. And the study's findings showed this by examining which states offer affordable and quality health care, long-term care, and other senior perks, using data pertaining to cost and quality of care for residents over 55 and over 100,000 senior citizen ratings. Caring.com sheds new light on where today's retirees should start moving. Spoiler alert!
Yeah.
You might want to pack some snow boots.
Oh, no.
I know. So tell me what's wrong with this article.
Well, it's all about money.
It's all about money. Every bit of it's about money.
Yep.
Your number one state to retire in? I love this. South Dakota. South Dakota.
Oh, it's so ridiculous.
It is ridiculous. You know, we've taken the life planning out of planning. And granted, if you've been irresponsible, you may have to resort to snow boots. But
you don't have to.
You don't have to. It's all about choices, right? And it's all about planning for those choices ahead of time, getting ahead of your game as far as what your financial aspects are, and really digging into what your life goals are. What are the things that drive you? What are you going to do in retirement that's going to fulfill you? And that's so important. One of the articles we wrote a long time ago, a Tightwad and Spendthrift. And I love this article, and not just because I wrote it. I love this article because it talks about balance.
Yes.
And usually we don't have balance, and it shows up everywhere. I was mentioning that to someone the other day about my political beliefs, and I said, my problem with my political beliefs is I don't like extremists, because nothing ever gets accomplished when you have extremists working in a room together. They can't come to the middle, and you have to have balance, right? And our life is no different. Balance is so, so important. Yet we try to go on the extreme. We try to say, and I've seen this. I've seen this over and over again. Someone so sick of working, someone that can't stand to work another day. They say, oh, we can live off of 60% of what we're living on now if we do this, and this. And I look at them and say, you're 58 years old. You're going to be miserable.
And how do you define live?
Right.
Yeah.
It's not living.
That's not living.
It's not living. So, what does that mean? What does it mean? For you to retire? What is that about for you? Most people, it is about their family. It's about beginning to spend time with those kids, grandkids, even some great grandkids that they've never got to do that before because they've been working. And they usually want to move closer to those. What if it's not the kids, grandkids, and great-grandkids? Oftentimes it's a charity. They want to give back to the things that they've always wanted to do and spend time. We have a lot of retirees. They're big-time volunteers in their communities. And why did they want to do that? Because they want to see the future generations to be able to take care of that and grow. But if you're living in South Dakota and you've never lived there before, are you going to have those passions about those community projects?
You're just going to stay inside all the time.
Yeah, that's first and foremost, right? Forget the Sunshine Belt. I love that. Forget the Sunshine Belt. Pack your snow boots, because that's what you need to do as far as your financial plan is concerned, right? Wrong. So when we come back, one of the things I want to talk about is I want to get a little bit more in depth on what this means about balance between the Tightwad and the Spendthrift in retirement, because this is really important. It's really important for you to tell yourself the truth, because progress only starts by telling yourself the truth.
More great information coming up after these messages right here on Life Planning 101. Welcome back, folks, to Life Planning 101. I'm Stace Gaddy. A special thank you to all of our sponsors for making this wonderful programming possible. Angela Robinson is our guest and expert, if you're just joining us, from Kennedy Financial Services right here in Eastland. Okay, imbalance, I'm going to toss it to you.
Yes.
Imbalance is where problems arise, correct?
That's right. And by the way, here's another statistic we found. A Financial Advisor magazine did a study. 51% of retirees actually stated that if they had the chance to do it over, they would have focused more on life goals and less on a specific nest egg dollar amount in their retirement planning. 51%. So tell us what you think. Why don't you tweet us? We've got our weekly poll going at KFS Life Planning. Are you focusing more on life goals or your financial goals for your retirement plan? Which one is it?
Yep.
You better answer correctly today, I guess, huh? No, tell the truth, right? So that's where we're going with this is, progress does start by kind of telling ourselves the truth. And there's an area of the brain, okay? It's called your insula. And there's a lot of research that's been done around this financially because that area of the brain is usually stimulated when we experience something unpleasant like a bad odor or a bad taste in our mouth. And it has really been linked to people with more insula activity tend to be tightwads with their spending, okay? Because they get a bad taste in their mouth when they spend money. And those with less tend to be spendthrifts. In other words, they spend a lot of money because it doesn't bother them at all to spend money.
Extremes.
That's right. These extremes. And the unfortunate thing is, and you probably laugh about this in your household, one of you is a tightwad, one of you is a spendthrift. Very few people have that balance, that in-between balance. We all know that guy that goes to the coffee shop every morning in his 1985 truck. He's probably worth $20 million. And,
yeah.
And if you hear stories about these people. I actually read about a man once that had this exact scenario, and he was unable to get specific care he needed from his personal physician. His financial advisor asked him, well, why don't you see someone else? And he said, well, that would cost me money outside of my health insurance network. Wow.
Yeah.
Right? Is that really reasonable? Or, going to the opposite, right? A couple, they're in their 60s. And we see this all the time, by the way. This is really sad. People in their early 60s making $300,000 a year as a couple, and their net worth, in other words, what they've saved for their retirement, including their home, is about $200,000. How are they going to
Spendthrift?
That's right. So, neither one of those is a healthy relationship with your money at all. But here's the good news. If you work on a few things, you can actually find that balance, and I'm going to give you some tips for savers. If you're normally that tightwad, use credit cards rather than cash. You're going to be apt to spend more if you do that. You can also rack up bonus points, so count that as. And shop when you're depressed, okay? If you're depressed, go out and shop. Spend some money. I always have a rule of thumb that I tell people in retirement. I said, this is how you spend your money in retirement. You spend it on other people, and you spend it on experiences.
Okay.
Again, go back to those unacceptable regrets at the end of retirement. Would you have loved to take your entire family to Australia or Hawaii and have a family trip? Do that once. Would that have been a dream of yours? Do it. Okay. Do it. If you're a tightwad now here, if we're a spendthrift, we may need to be talking to the tightwads. Okay, prepay for your vacations, and you're going to have more fun if you do that because you'll do all you can eat food and drinks, and you won't think about spending money. Reward yourself for accomplishing goals. I always do this. I tend to be on the tightwad side. I will admit it. So when I'm going to buy something, here's how I do it. I tell everybody in the world I'm going to buy it. Because if I tell them I'm going to buy it, I will stick to my word. If I don't tell anybody I'm going to buy it, I won't stick to my word. I'll back out. I'll back out. So if something's really important for you to do, you need to do that. And look into your future. Don't have regrets. For the spenders, virtually the opposite. Use cash for every purchase. Don't use your credit card at all because it's going to be harder for you to shell out cash. Never shop when you're depressed.
Right.
Make a commitment to save a specific amount by a future date and tell everybody about it. Tell everybody you're going to do it so you'll hold your word. I'm a big proponent for having savings automatically deducted out of your checking account every month. It's called paying yourself first. Pay often, pay yourself first. Do that. That's so important. And then again, for spenders, this is a one consistent that doesn't change between these two, is only spend your money on two things: other people and experiences.
That's great.
Think about it. If you spend your money on an object, how long does your happiness last?
Well, sometimes you have buyer's remorse, so it doesn't last at all.
That's right. Or, a whole hot week.
Yeah.
But if you spend your money on an experience with your family, how long does that memory last?
Lifetime,
right? So that spending psychology is so important, and it is so linked to your financial plan. It is so linked to your life plan because we're all thinking about different things. And I want to leave you with one final story. I had a gentleman come in our office, and we were talking about his legacy planning, and usually that's referring to what you leave behind, right? And we talked about that, and your legacy really goes far beyond that dollar amount. In his particular story, he says, I've done enough for my children. I've done enough. I paid for their college. I helped them get into their first house. I've done enough. I want to leave everything to charity. I just want it all to go to charity. Great. Wonderful. We dug down into his story, and really what he wanted was he wanted his kids to continue what he had been doing for years and years, where he spent 2 or 3 months out of his work life to do missions, to do all this stuff and everything else. So when it came to the bottom of it, what we actually ended up doing is, rather than leaving it outright to charity, is we set up a gifting for him and his family to continue to do, not only for his generation, his children's generation, but for the third and the fourth generations to come, that they would all have money to continue to do those missions that were so important to him. Those kids would learn how to gift, learn how to look at charities they were the board of directors, going to be putting together where the money was going to be going every single year. And it totally changed the aspect. Didn't change the plan, the fact that he didn't want the children to have anything else, but it changed the fact that we really got into what was important to him, not just the money. And how many times do we do that? We think we know what we want, but we really haven't looked inside to see what really our desire is. And that happens with the retirement planning. That happens with legacy planning. It happens everywhere if you just look at the money first. The money should be the last thing that you look at. You should be asking yourself, what are your values? Or what is your vision, right? You know, there's that simple little Latin phrase that we all have heard, and I don't think we can hear it too many times. Carpe diem. Seize the day. We forget to do that in retirement. We just look at the money. My name is Angela Robinson with Kennedy Financial Services. We help people live life on purpose. And the reason we do is so I can sleep at night. but really, you know, we help people live life on purpose because it's not about a dollar amount in life. It is about living life on purpose and accomplishing the things that you want to accomplish. We thank everyone for listening every week. Make sure to follow us on Facebook at Kennedy Financial, and also you can look at all of our archives, katxradio.com, kwbyradio.com. Have a great week, and God bless.
Thank you for joining us for Life Planning 101, brought to you by Kennedy Financial Services of Eastland. Tune in every Monday morning at 8:30 on KATX, and again on Saturday morning at 9 o'clock on KATX and KWBY for more Life Planning 101.
Securities and investment advisory services offered through VSR Financial Services Incorporated, a registered investment advisor and member of FINRA SIPC. Kennedy Financial Services is not owned or controlled by VSR Financial Services Incorporated.